Thanks for joining us for the NorthBay Podcast, where we explore how outdoor education is reshaping the way students learn, grow, and connect with the world around them. I'm your host, Rick Garber, and in each episode, we're going to dive into the impact of outdoor schools, the challenges and successes of bringing learning beyond four walls, and the movement to make outdoor education accessible to all. Today, I have James Obasiolu with us, and I met James about 6, 8 months ago at an outdoor learning partnership meeting. James was a featured speaker at that meeting, and I got to hear a little bit of his story. And I found out that his story intersects with NorthBay's story. James is an incredibly accomplished young man. He's a youth climate ambassador. He's on the Howard County School Board, the Environmental Sustainability Board, Yale Young Global Scholar, Alexander Hamilton Scholar. I'm sure that I'm leaving a lot out, not to mention an accomplished musician. So I'm really excited to have James join us, tell us a little bit about his story, and tell us a little bit about how outdoor learning and his experiences intersect and have really done something special in his life. So James, good morning.
Good morning, Rick. Thanks so much for having me.
So James, just tell us a little bit about you and your background, maybe some of your outdoor experiences early on.
Of course, Rick. Well, hi, everybody. My name is James Obasiolu. I am currently a first year student at Harvard University in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Well, thinking back to my time in my childhood and my youth, one of the biggest things that stands out to me is my experience at North Bay. I was this scrawny sixth grader from Hammond Middle School, and I eventually went to Athelton High School, who had never really been anywhere like North Bay before, right? I had lived in Prince George's County before moving to Howard County, but their spaces weren't exactly those pristine nature spaces, like completely untouched, like I experienced in North Bay, you know? And I think the first thing that hit me just was how different the air felt by the Chesapeake Bay. And I remember stepping off of our school bus. I had this green sort of winter coat on because I was thinking it was going to be so cold, and my mom made sure I was bundled up. And I remember stepping off our school bus, not because someone told us to, but like because I could. And I think back home in Colombia, um, like stepping out of my school bus, that just wasn't the most comfortable. I think growing up in Prince George's County, I experienced some type of environmental inequity that has empowered me to want to protect the outdoors, want to learn all I can about outdoor education. North Bay definitely, when paired with my previous experiences with environmental injustice, made me know that this was going to be my life's mission, that I was going to help advocate for more outdoor education programs, for a world where a child's zip code doesn't determine their right to breathe clean air. And so I'm learning environmental science and public policy right here at Harvard, and I'm going to use all my previous experiences to make that world.
That's awesome. Thanks, James. Tell me a little bit, like, okay, you get to North Bay and you step off the bus. Like, what do you remember from that experience? I mean, you must have been 11 years old.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What stands out to you? What's stuck?
Hmm. I think what really stuck uh, about this experience, just going to North Bay, was this moment during our macroinvertebrate collection. I had never done anything like that before. I was maybe in a pool for swim team when I was young, but
Mhm.
I never actually gone into the ocean, and not only the ocean, but to go and analyze different organisms. Like we got to wade around in the Chesapeake Bay, and I remember my counselor at the time. Um, Miss Sheffield, I remember her name is Priscilla Sheffield from Hammond Middle School. And she pulls up this tiny little creature. I think it was some type of mayfly larva. And she goes, this little guy can only really live in clean water. And so she talked about her own experience and how her own kids went to North Bay as well. And so
Mm,
like I'm holding this thing in my palm and I'm thinking like we never had anything like this at the lakes back home. And so I think that was one of the biggest moments that stood out for me. I think the giant swing also was pretty insane. I think we were a couple feet
yeah,
up, just being able to rock back and forth, and it was like the coolest experience ever. And just looking over the trees below and the water line, and so um, it was really just such fond memories. Like I remember when
mhm,
we were sitting in the cafeteria, the food was great. I have to say, like just being able to share that moment of community with all of my fellow
mhm,
sixth graders, the people that I would grow up with, or those moments in the cabins that got to me the most, just being able to have conversations. Of course, they weren't full-grown adult conversations, but of course, it was nice to be able to spend time with my
right.
friends. All these kids from different schools talking about their neighborhoods, their families. Um, I think there was something about being at North Bay that made the stories that some of my friends shared with me just feel safe to share.
Mm. That's incredible. And so many kids come to North Bay like you and have maybe never been in a natural body of water, and that's their first experience, and it's connective to nature. But one of the things that we think is so important is those experiences together, that it's a shared experience. You talked about that time in the cabin and on the adventure elements, and those things are fun, but like they're also the connective part of the experience that 10 years later, 20 years later, people remember, and it takes them back to those experiences with their peers and in nature, and connects them back to the learning and the experience, right? um, so many kids um, don't have opportunities to
Exactly.
to to experience things like this, whether it's at North Bay or any outdoor school. um, tell me about, I guess, tell me about a little bit about that inequity, about you and how you see your life fitting in as part of the solution.
Of course. I think you're so right that so many students don't get to experience what North Bay has to offer. I wish North Bay were an experience all across the United States that all of our students, American students, all of our students worldwide could experience. I think
Mhm.
North Bay basically rewired how I thought about what was normal. I think growing up in PG County, I figured that everyone um, dealt with stuff like bad air quality and not much green space. That was just life, right? But at North
Right.
Bay, I got to really see what healthy looked like. I think just not just the environment, but how
Right.
communities could work together. I think when we do those team challenges on the ropes course, for example, or um, when we had to present our some of our like little water quality findings, whatever it might have been, presenting with the staff there and with our peers, there was this sense that everyone's voice mattered. And I
Mhm.
think I didn't feel like that was the case at such a young age. Like when I was in middle school, for example, I didn't feel like I had a voice. I didn't feel like I had an opportunity to make change. And I think North Bay, being able to experience that at such a young age, it really empowered me to want to make my voice heard. Um,
Mhm.
and I think it really made me feel confident about wanting to spend more time in the outdoors. I think it helped me want to get more involved with Boy Scouts, for example, so that I
Mhm.
could be in nature more. I think the environmental piece was just huge for me. I think learning about all these different species
Right.
along the Chesapeake Bay, I think seeing how everything in an ecosystem connects. Seeing the importance of education, environmental education, but also
Right.
kindness from the To Be short that was
Right.
that we got to watch in the barn.
Mhm.
That planted the seeds that went into my work in environmental justice later.
Right.
When I eventually served on the Howard County School Board, the Howard County Board of
Mhm.
Education, I'd find myself asking those same kind of questions that we asked at North Bay,
Hmm.
what are the conditions telling us? Like who's being affected by our decisions?
Right.
What
Right.
would healthy look like? And so but I think the personal growth stuff was just as important. I think I was pretty quiet back in sixth grade. I remember
Sure.
there's this photo of me and all of my friends, and these sixth graders, these 11-year-olders are making silly faces. I had my little hoodie up and like in this oversized jacket that my mom had packed. Like I was the quiet kid back in sixth grade, not the one who would
Mhm.
lead volunteer activities, right?
Right.
Um, I think North Bay pushed me out of the comfort zone that I had in ways that felt supportive rather than
Yeah.
forced. I think by the end of the week, my head was down. I was helping other kids navigate some of the ropes courses, the ones who hadn't been able to
Hmm.
get to them throughout the week, and asking questions during some of our presentation. I remember, North Bay, stand up. And like some of the chants it was
Yeah.
such a fun experience. And I think on terms of inequity, there's so much that we have to do to make sure programs like North Bay there's so much that we have to do to ensure that programs like North Bay reach as many students as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be done. It
Hmm.
takes intentional effort together. So this will probably make you uncomfortable, but I want you to brag about yourself a little bit here, because I'd like you to tell us, about this sort of, quiet, shy 11-year-old that comes to this program, has this experience, maybe wakes up a little bit. But it's not just North Bay. It is then the continuum of experiences and opportunities that you were confident enough to go after, right? You talked about Boy Scouts. I think you were an Eagle Scout.
That's right.
And you had opportunities to serve with the Howard County Conservancy and do some really amazing things that I'm sure were formative, and North Bay is a part of that piece for you
Hmm.
and for many kids of scaffolding experiences to create change makers. And so just walk us a little bit through like that journey for you.
Of course. Well, you're absolutely right. And I think that we take a little bit of not only everyone we meet with us, but also the programs that we might interact with, the education that we receive in our schools, the meetings that we have, the books that we read. And so I think North Bay was really I'm imagining if I were a seed, right, waiting to sprout and waiting to be planted. I'm on the shelf of like Lowe's or Home Depot. I think North Bay was that person who like brought this pack of seeds, right? Brought students from schools to experience this, and planted these seeds of growth and lifelong learning. Like really
Mhm.
cultivated that in those 4 days. I think those 4 days, I'm thinking back to how influential they were, how transformative they were. And I would say that that was really the beginning of my journey. I can't nowhere before that point do I remember there being a more influential, a more compelling experience for me than when I went
Mhm.
to North Bay. I think it was really that was really the inception of the rest of my journey here, and it's
Mhm.
continued all the way through in the past 7 years. I know that this is my life's mission, and I know that I'm going to continue it for the next few decades with
Mhm.
environmental science. I think outdoor education and the conservation of our nature. And
Mhm.
so I was thinking that because of what I learned at North Bay, I think that was able to just just go tenfold. Like it was an exponential sort of experience, and it was only up from
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I would just say that I realized through the experience I had at North Bay that students belong in this sort of act of the outdoors and of nature. I think
Mhm.
I did get involved more with my Boy Scout troop after that because I was like, hey, well, I deserve to be outdoors as well. I deserve to be able to
Mhm.
experience what nature is like, what all of the beauty of our ecosystems have to offer. And so
Right.
I think that North Bay in that way was really the starting point of everything that followed.
So you've done some amazing things, but like, what? Tell me about where you're going.
Of
What are you
course,
dreaming about? What are your dreams, and how are you going to get
absolutely.
there?
Well, right now at Harvard, I'm studying environmental science and public policy. It's this great interdisciplinary major that incorporates all those different aspects. And I mentioned earlier my own journey with environmental injustice and how participating in North Bay sort of activated something within me. I think after this point, after I earn my degree, I want to eventually attend law school. I want to matriculate there. I want to be
Mhm.
working in the community with students experiencing just ground level environmental injustice, right? The communities that we don't really see,
Right.
what's not really reported on. I think that with my own experience in Prince George's County, with my the when I first moved here, I was born in China, and we eventually arrived in Laurel, Maryland, in Prince George's County. And the neighborhood that I moved into, my preschool was right down the street from a waste treatment facility. And
Okay.
so the industrial haze, the
Right.
smog on some days was enough that you could taste it. I remember this metallic taste. It
Hmm.
tasted like pennies. And at night, I would have these horrible, horrible asthma attacks. I remembered that I just feel like I couldn't breathe. And when I moved to Howard County, I realized that this was a community that was just sitting right next to it, next to where I had just lived, about 10 miles down, the way, down the highway. But it was completely different. Like there
Hmm.
were some more of those trees. There were a lot more, I should say, a lot more trees, a lot
Yeah.
more environmental protections there. And I realized that somehow a child zip code of the mailing address of where a family lived could determine their
Hmm.
health outcomes,
Right.
could determine their life expectancy, whether
Hmm.
whether their kids could breathe clean air, drink clean water, right? I mean,
Right.
you look at places like Louisiana affected after Hurricane Katrina. Some people, when they turn the faucet spout to get water, there
Hmm.
is brown water coming out, right? And so
Right.
just throughout the United States, there's so many different examples of environmental inequity. And I know that I want to do what I can. I want to take all the experiences that I've had through different scholarship programs, through going to such a just resource heavy institution like Harvard, where
Hmm.
there's like so many things to do, so many things to learn, so many people to interact with, so that you can sort of have the ideas needed to
Hmm.
help improve the world. That I want to pay that forward. I want to make sure that people who aren't getting to experience these opportunities, that they have someone who is fighting for them, an advocate who
Hmm.
will make sure that um, who will ensure that there's someone like lifting them up and saying these communities matter, even though no one
Hmm.
wants to talk about them. And so,
Yeah.
what's next? Well, I want to be an environmental justice lawyer. I want to be a prosecutor who will bring class action lawsuits against big corporations who might be exploiting those marginalized communities,
Hmm.
like the one that I grew up in. I want to challenge some of those discriminatory regulations that allow
Hmm.
some of those factories, some of those facilities to be in these low-income neighborhoods. I mean, when you go to a wealthy neighborhood, for example, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful here. I mean, everyone's lawns, they're really they're really curated. Everyone's houses are wonderful. You don't see any factories around, right? You don't, around
Hmm.
these areas. Where are those factories? Well, those factories are concentrated in those low-income communities, and it leads to
Right.
high rates of cancer, higher rates of sickness and illness. You can
Hmm.
see that the air quality. I mean, just when you go
Right.
from one area to another, from a marginalized community, a low income area, to um, a more wealthier community, you
Hmm.
can just feel the difference. The air feels a lot more heavy. It feels a lot
Hmm.
more heavy,
Right.
and you can see that the people, they aren't doing that well. And so I wanna fix that. I want to do as much
Yeah.
as I can in my time here on this wonderful earth to improve that.
Yeah. So one of the things I've really sensed ever since I've met you and hearing you speak, talking to you today, is, is a real passion for service. And and I don't know where that came from for you. It's something that was part of the North Bay program. We definitely make sure that kids get an opportunity to take action and actually do some service in their community to help one another. Um, where do you get it? Where do you get that passion for service? And how do you try to, I guess, bring others along in that journey?
Well, Rick, I just wanted to say thank you so much for recognizing that within me. Service is such a centerpiece, such a cornerstone of my
Mm.
life, in my relationships, in my work,
Right.
even down to schoolwork. I'm thinking back to my first day of math class here at Harvard, which was just last Monday. And
Mhm.
as people were coming in, my classmates in that class, there was a sheet of paper, an attendance sheet where you could check your names off. I was like, well, I got it. I'll check your name off. Like, what's your name? Like, I've got you. And so I
Right.
really think that it was the way that I was raised. I grew up in a Chinese Nigerian household where
Mhm.
we were taught that you're on this earth to do good and that when you venture on the journey, it's not all about the heights that you reach, right? When you're climbing up this mountain, going up this hill, it's not all about what you yourself accomplish, what you can achieve, but it's really about bringing others along with you, making sure that the climb is
Mm.
possible for others, because
Right.
that's how we create the best type of society to live in, right? One where everyone has what they need
Mm.
to be able to do the things that they love. I think also it calls back to my own Chinese name. I mean, I mentioned I'm half Chinese, and in Chinese, my name is Wang Jiyu. And the last two syllables, Jiyu, is also my middle name, James Jiyu
Mm.
Obasiolu. Now, in Chinese, Ji means bestow, or Ji means hope, and then Yu means bestow. So in a way, my name means to bestow hope onto others, to lift other
Right.
people up, to empower them and inspire them on their journeys. And so I think service is the way to do that. I want to give back for all of the opportunities that I've had as a person who grew up overseas, the son of immigrants, and being able to reach these heights. I didn't do it alone. And I know that other people in reaching where they are going, they won't be able to do it alone either. It's really by coming
Mhm.
together
Right.
um, that we can really achieve everything that we're looking for to solve these huge global issues like
Yeah.
climate change, global warming, world hunger, right? So systemic
Hmm.
inequity, um, unequal access to education, whatever it might be. And I think,
Hmm.
Rick, you demonstrate that by dedicating your life to outdoor education and to making sure that these programs reach as many students as possible. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that's the most admirable thing. And so thank you for your service as well, Rick.
Oh, thank you. And there's such synergy between what you're doing with your life and what North Bay tries to do in the world.
That's right.
We're really created to create that access to education experiences, particularly in marginalized communities,
That's
and to make sure that where a child lives doesn't determine that outcome of whether they have those opportunities or not.
hmm
Right? North Bay was created to solve that,
Yeah,
and that's a constant work, right?
of
It's
course.
constant work. And so I love hearing all of the parallels and passion and purpose between your life, what we're doing at North Bay, and how we're moving forward. We're coming up on our 20th anniversary, and we are so excited to have you as the keynote speaker for that. Um, what are you looking forward to with that gala, that experience? Like, for us, it's not a look backwards. It's about all the things that we've been talking about today. The environmental injustices, the equity and access to incredible education experiences, the building hope and opportunity uh, for everyone, you know? And so like it's a look forward. What are you thinking going into that? We're so excited that you're going to join us in that celebration. What are your thoughts?
Rick, thanks so much. I want to say that words can't even express how grateful I am to have been tapped for this to serve as the keynote speaker for the 20th anniversary gala. I think being part of this 20th anniversary feels like coming home in a way. I think North Bay invested in me when I was just this skinny sixth grader from Hammond Middle School with an inhaler and big questions about why my neighborhood looks so different from others I'd visit. I
Mm,
think now, having gone from collecting those water samples and macroinvertebrates in those bay waters to actually casting votes on education
mhm,
policy, for example, that affects tens of thousands of students. I think by coming back and serving as this keynote speaker and being able to help North Bay celebrate its 20th anniversary, I get to be living proof of what happens when you give young people transformative experiences and tell them that their voices matter. But
mm,
I know that I'm not unique in that room of students. I think North Bay has worked with over hundreds of thousands of students over these
mhm,
20 years. And I think mostly kids from those communities that typically don't get access to
mhm,
places like this. And I think we're
right.
talking about an entire generation of people, right? About 20 years, an entire generation of people who learns that geography doesn't have to determine your possibilities. I think this gala represents something important about environmental justice, which is my whole thing. I think that access to nature and outdoor education, it shouldn't depend on your family's income or your school district's budget, for example.
Mhm,
I think when you give kids from urban areas in Baltimore and rural communities in Western Maryland, Eastern Maryland, Eastern Shore as well, the chance to really experience healthy ecosystems firsthand, I think you're not just teaching them science, right? You're showing them what they deserve to protect, to be able to experience, right? And I think 20 years later, as we're dealing with climate change and environmental challenges that are only getting more urgent, we
mhm,
need young leaders who understands that environmental protection and community empowerment, that that those two are the same type of work. I think that's what North Bay taught me.
mhm.
And that's what the celebration is really about for me. I think honoring that vision and making sure it continues.
James, education obviously is critical at North Bay, and foundational, at North Bay is that, kids owning their education and really feeling empowered to take control, to use education as the tool that moves them forward and makes them servants in the world to make the world a better place. That's so foundational in who North Bay is. And I'm really excited to hear about your journey at Harvard, at such a prestigious university. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there, and how that's going to really prepare you to get out and serve?
Of course. Well, earlier I mentioned I'm a first year at Harvard studying environmental science and public policy, which feels like the natural evolution of everything North Bay sparked in me. But look, we know this by looking at North Bay, that the real work is happening beyond the classroom, right? Out in the field. And I want to say right now I'm serving as an associate in Harvard's Fellow and Study Groups program with the Kennedy School of Government and
Hmm.
working directly with former Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona on educational policy. And I think that connection between environmental education and formal schooling, that's straight from the North Bay playbook about using those authentic experiences that you gain during the program to drive your learning. I think that being able to speak with Secretary Cardona about my own experiences with these robust, these enriching, these just just empowering, such empowering programs like North Bay will be just the opportunity of a lifetime. I want to tell him about my own experiences at North Bay and get his perspective on what we can do to expand those programs, North Bay, all across the United States. I am also music is a big part of my life. I think the
Hmm.
harmony that you see with nature is so incredibly important. I'm a cellist with the Harvard Radcliffe Orchestra,
Hmm.
and it's actually a fun fact. It's the oldest symphony orchestra, continuously operating symphony orchestra in the United States. At
Wow.
Harvard, I'll say that there's a lot
Wow.
of this like oldest things. Like,
Hmm.
I'll give you an example. I was just eating breakfast in the Annenberg Dining Hall, and some of the sculptures that you'll see of influential people in the university's history are up there. Now I'm thinking, oh, well, these sculptures, like it's got to have come in a recent renovation. And I'll go up to read the little um, the epigraph for the sculpture, and the sculpture was created in 1840 while the person was alive, and it's
Hmm.
such history there. But I think mentioning about the orchestra, I think going back to the orchestra, I should say, just like at North Bay, music and environmental work both require listening, collaboration,
Hmm.
and understanding that individual excellence means nothing without community harmony. And I want to be vulnerable real quick and say that my mother is battling cancer right now, which connects to everything North Bay taught me about environmental health. I think the communities that get clean air and the communities that get industrial pollution, like the one that I grew up,
Hmm.
those I used to want to think that those were accidents, but those aren't accidents. I think they're deliberate policy choices. And having grown up in one and experienced the other, I'm committed. I'm more than committed um, to ensuring that no child has to choose between breathing freely and having a home.
Thank you, James, for joining us today. It's been a powerful conversation. It's been uplifting for me to hear about your educational journey, to hear about your passion, to hear about your commitment to serving your community. It's really been an honor to be able to have this conversation with you, and I am so looking forward to the 20th anniversary gala, your participation, your words of wisdom, and how you're going to impact that room. Thank you again for joining us, and I look forward to it. That's a wrap for this episode of the North Bay Podcast. But remember, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Outdoor learning is a movement, and we all have a role to play in making sure every student, no matter where they are, has access to the life-changing benefits of learning in nature. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to subscribe, like, and share the podcast with others who believe in the power of learning beyond the classroom. And remember, outdoor school shouldn't be a privilege for the few, but rather a right for every student. See you next time.